Thank you. And I'd like to start by, is this okay? Yeah. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. So, as you heard, All Together Now promotes racial equality through education. And we seek long-term social change by teaching the choir. And by the choir, I mean that there's 50% of Australians who are positive about cultural diversity. We don't think that anyone's going to listen to us who has racially biased views. Our theory of change is that if you can get people who already agree with our point of view, who believe racism is wrong, if you can teach them to understand what racism is and how to speak up against it, then they will then do that and also have conversations with their friends and family who do have racist views. So actually our impact is through the people who already agree. This talk is mainly directed at the people here who are creative, artists or whatever, like dancers, singers, like everyone who's creative, who would like to extend their support, who like to extend their reach and get exposure by working with an organisation. So we're a very small not-for-profit. We've worked with artists in quite a few different ways. But today I wanted to talk to you about our Comedy versus Racism event. Comedy versus Racism has been going for 3 years now. The third event was held earlier this year. The event actually started with a different event. So in 2011, we launched an event called I'm Not Racist But. It wasn't a comedy event, it was actually more of a chat or debate event. And myself and Leanne Townsend, who at that time was the CEO of the Reconciliation New South Wales, we came up with this concept because at that time we were really concerned that nobody was openly talking about racism and using the word racism. One form of denial is to talk about harmony, you know. So we thought, let's just get this out there and get people talking. We ran that event for a couple of years together. Both All Together Now and Reconciliation New South Wales. And one of the speakers at one of those events happened to be Jennifer Wong. And so if you fast forward a couple of years, Jennifer Wong eventually became an ambassador of our organisation. For those of you who don't know her, she's a comedian and she's also on ABC. And so she and I spoke for probably at least a year about an idea that she had which eventually became Comedy versus Racism. And basically it's a group of comedians and some other panellists sometimes from diverse cultural backgrounds who use their creative abilities of comedy to talk about what is often a very confronting subject for people, racism. Just briefly to let you know, everything that All Together Now does must be evaluated in some way, because if we don't do that, then we don't know that it's having an impact. And if it's not having an impact, then we kind of get rid of it because it's a waste of time and our resources are very tight. And so at every event, or after every event, we send everyone who attended a survey. And that's how we know whether or not it's had an effect on people. We also look at things like ticket sales and that, but that doesn't really give us a sense of impact. This is a screen print by Jenny Holzer, who produced it in 1990. Jenny Holzer is actually an artist. Use what is dominant in a culture to change it quickly. Ever since All Together Now was formed in 2010, this is something that we've always lived by. We feel that there's no point doing something that nobody's going to turn up to, so that's why we use comedy instead of, say, a forum, because we think that social action needs to be engaging. Not only that, but I think that comedy in particular, but also the arts more generally, is able to make people feel a tiny bit uncomfortable. And I feel like that tiny bit of uncomfortable is necessary to help people critically reflect on their own attitudes and behaviours. So I don't want to see any more harmony morning teas because I don't think that they actually help address racism. I think that making people think and feel a little bit uncomfortable is the way to actually get things to change. And now for a really boring bit, I'm really sorry, but I have to do this boring bit, is that if you happen to think of an organisation that you share values with and you want to work with that organisation, probably the first thing they'll think about is risk. I just want to show you this really boring table because I'd actually never seen a table like this until I started working on Altogether Now. But we have to refer to this because my board will not let us do anything unless we look at what our risks are, how likely they are, and then come up with a mitigation strategy. So our highest rated risks in terms of our comedy versus racism event were two things: that the project manager may not be able to continue in her role for whatever reason, and that would be really problematic because if halfway through she had to leave, then it would be very hard to organise the event. And the other thing was that unfavourable comments on social media by influential people disparaging our event, particularly if it was before the event itself, would also be a very high risk. This actually happened to us and we didn't have a mitigation strategy for it, and it became quite problematic. So if you're talking to an organisation that you want to work with, just be aware that they might ask you what your opinion is about what things might go wrong and how you can work on mitigating them together. Finally, Altogether Now is a very creative, experimental organisation. So I can't tell you whether or not Comedy versus Racism will continue in its current form. It probably won't, because we like to extend and adapt as we go along and learn from audience feedback. So every year it's a different event. We're still talking about what Comedy versus Racism might turn into, so I can't tell you anything yet because I don't actually know. No decision's been made, but please stay tuned. Thank you.